Alright, so this video is going to be just an angry rant to get my emotions and opinions out there so that I can have some peace of mind just for the next couple of hours. Because, to be quite frank, I'm really sick of what is going on right now in this country. Forgive me if it doesn't appear to be as academic in terms of sources and things like that. I'm going off on memory. Let's get this out the way. So recap from the last Sarah Everard video. What happened? Well, it turns out that the body was actually her. Condolences to her family first and foremost, because these are the people that we don't seem to be hearing much from, if at all. In fact, I've not seen any interviews, I've not seen any articles reference them, I've heard nothing about them. They've not even been outspoken on social media. They have been completely left in the dust as the body of their loved one has been systematically raised up on an altar, on a cross even, and used as a martyr for the feminist, far leftist cause. I find it absolutely horrible that nobody, not even people on our side, I mean maybe some people have mentioned it, but nobody has mentioned the family and how they feel about all this and how they must feel to see the country basically imploding on itself over their daughter, and the fact that their feelings are not actually being thought about or even registered in the minds of people. That alone is really bad. I'm sure all they want is for justice to be served so that then they can bury their daughter and leave her to rest in peace. But what gets me is that why her out of all the other women that have ever been killed by men and women? Because believe it or not, one thing that people aren't telling you about, though thankfully Sargon on the Lotus Eaters did mention this, is that the man had an accomplice. The cop that's now been charged very quickly with her murder and is now in court unusually quick. People don't usually go to court in any particular Western country for another couple of months. Like, it took Russian Deadpool ages. It must have took at least a year to get him into a courthouse. And that was subject to constant delays. But this guy, wow, he's already on trial. That didn't take long, did it? Interesting. Just a little thought. But nobody ever mentions his accomplice. Nobody knows if she's going to trial at the same time or if she's being trialed at a different time. We don't have any idea. And as far as I'm aware, she's only really been arrested for aiding and abetting. But the feminists are so quick to ignore that, because it destroys the whole narrative that men are evil and men are out there primarily to go and kill women or to go out there and rape women. Now they can turn back and say to me, oh, it's not all men, hashtag not all men, it's that all men are potential rapists and murderers. But of course, that flies in the face of reality. Most men, let alone all men, are not potential rapists and murderers. Are disabled men now all of a sudden potential murderers? Men who have physical disabilities, so, they can't run after a person to kill them, or they don't have any arms, or just one arm? What about men with Down syndrome? Are they now potential murderers? So not all men are potential rapists and murderers. By that logic, why is it that not all women are potential rapists and murderers? And why is it that only women have to fear for their lives in the streets? Men also fear for their lives, especially if you're in a gang, especially if you're in a strange part of town that you don't know. And I try not to speak for men and for women, but I am speaking for everybody when I say that yes, we have all felt these feelings. It is not unique to women. So to tie all that up, the policeman is now going to be put on trial. He will see justice because it's pretty clear that he did it. So to tie all that up, the policeman does not represent all men. He does not prove that all men are potential rapists and murderers, because that is statistically impossible and is only an ignorant, bigoted stance from feminists, and actually I will say most normal women, because most normal women may not be feminists, but they are heavily influenced by feminists to fear men, not necessarily to hate men, although a lot of them actually are quite sexist towards men. Believe me, I've seen it enough times in my life that this is definitely the case. It is far more acceptable for a woman to say the most bigoted, stupid things about men openly in front of everybody than it is for a man to say maybe a woman ought to stay in the kitchen a bit more. A woman could say anything about a man and she'll be largely fine unless she goes into race or sexuality, then maybe. And we need to not jump the gun over one person, because this is the thing. Last year, there was a woman that was killed by a cop, only she was strangled by the man. I don't actually know how Sarah Everard died. I don't want to know how she died. It's probably horrible. But why is it that that woman was not talked about? And if I remember correctly, judging by the look of her, she was clearly not the same class as Sarah Everard. Maybe she was a bit working class, she looked it. I know you can't judge a book by its cover in this case, but usually there are telltale signs that somebody has worked in stressful jobs or hard jobs all their lives compared to people who haven't. Sarah Everard worked in marketing and very clearly looked quite well to do. Why did nobody talk about that? Why would we not talking about that woman? And why is it that these people don't talk about the grooming gang scandal and other such cases where a person's race lets them get away with literal rape, which has happened in this country? Why is this not being talked about? Why aren't they protesting that? Maybe it defeats the whole diversity mantra and the whole anti-racist movement that aren't actually anti-racist. Maybe it's that. Maybe these uncomfortable truths that these things do happen from these demographics is too much for them. It defeats their narrative. Maybe it's just easier to attack white males, I don't know, even though they're actually attacking all men in this case, let's be honest. It's that syndrome that I talked about in the last video, and also she fits the right mold for the feminists to use for their campaigns. She has the right look. It's honestly sickening to be talking about somebody who died in such a way like that, but hey, you know what? This is where we are at this point. And the protest. Don't get me started on the protest. First off, yes, it broke lockdown rules because it was a large gathering of more than 6 people, and this is the type of law that all these people were for. At the very beginning, this is what they encouraged their MPs and other people around them to support because of a disease that kills only a very small percentage of even the elderly. It has a 90-odd% survival rate, yet they, in their infinite wisdom of the mob, decided to go along with the pseudoscience of so-called scientists and back the lockdowns. These were the same people that encouraged the BLM to riot and do what they did in London and graffiti all our cenotaphs and statues. These are the same people that ridiculed the anti-lockdown protesters and egged on the police in cracking down on them. These are all the same people. These are all the people that lampoon them, saying, oh, look at these anti-vaxxers. Look at these idiots, these conspiracy theorists. What are they doing breaking lockdown? They're going to spread the disease more, whereas they're not saying the same thing for the BLM supporters and not for themselves, because apparently coronavirus doesn't spread if left-wingers gather. Lo and behold, when the police actually crack down on these people, which I'm actually surprised that they did, considering who leads the Metropolitan Police, Cressida Dick, a woke SJW lesbian, I'm surprised she went for these feminists. They're her people. But they did, because unfortunately, that's the law that you lot backed. So don't come crying to me that your right to protest was ruined, and that now, in Parliament, a bill has passed that has limited the right to protest even more. That is on you, because after Sarah Everard died, we had a deluge of people telling us that safety is of paramount importance. Women should feel protected. They should be protected. Who by? Well, not by their fathers, not by their brothers, not by their husbands, boyfriends, nephews, or their friends, be it female or male, or even themselves, because none of these people actually support self-defense legislation to make it easier for people to defend themselves, because in this country, it's almost impossible to defend yourself. The law is very stringent on what self-defense is. None of these people are against this legislation. None of these people are against restricting the right to bear arms. In fact, they're for it. These are the people who go on about America's gun culture. You lot don't even realise that you can't even carry pepper spray on your person, can't carry knives over a certain length, which aren't really going to do much against a police officer or any kind of man anyway, or woman in that kind of situation. It's not going to kill them. It might hurt them a little bit, but anything above 5 inches, I do believe, or maybe even 3 or 4, you can't carry them on your person, otherwise you'd be guilty of possession. You can't conceal carry firearms because you have to have a firearms license and the police have to know that you have that gun, and you can't own a gun for self-defense. That is something that the law will not count as a reason to own a gun. None of you are for any of that, and yet you wonder why, after you whine, moan and complain about how men are evil, how men are a threat, how men are going to do this and that to you, how the state enables violence against women, how we're in a rape culture, the state and men in general seem to be working together to attack women, as crazy that sounds, that when wets like the Tories, who are currently in power, who are paternalistic, because that's what the Conservatives are, when they announce a furthering of the surveillance state and a furthering of police presences, not just in the streets, but also in clubs, yes, apparently there will now be plainclothes police officers in clubs. So not only will men have to deal with stupid bouncers who, of course, are notoriously sexist against men, even though they are all mostly men, we now have to deal with plainclothes police officers, people that we wouldn't be able to pick out from a crowd that they are actually police officers, which means that we're basically being spied on by a semi-secret police. And I actually saw a feminist complaining about this. We asked for security, not a surveillance state. Well, I've got news for you, love. We've been in a surveillance state for decades. We are the most heavily surveillanced state in Europe, and that says a lot, doesn't it? And And you have just advocated for more because you didn't ask for the right to defend yourself. You didn't ask for more means to defend yourself. You didn't ask for the legislation to change the self-defense laws. You asked for the state to defend you. And this is what the state does. This is the only way the state can defend a person, by taking away their freedom. And this is what Benjamin Franklin was on about all those years ago when he said, and I paraphrase, those who trade in their freedom for security deserve neither. Because the whole point of that is not just, oh, you don't deserve freedom because you've traded it in. It's the fact that it's a trade-off, isn't it? Either we have more freedom and women are responsible for their own self-defense and for their own safety, which they have to be anyway because this is real life. A lot of these people seem to be really ignorant about real life. You do realise that you have to take responsibility for yourself. The state can't be there everywhere for you. The police can't be there everywhere for you. It's impossible. But these are socialists, so they think they can do that anyway. You're trading not just your freedom for a bit of security, but everybody else's freedom, which means that we can't do a lot of the things that we would like to do, like go out in parks and enjoy ourselves, go on a protest to denounce something that we don't like, even to say things, and this will probably also affect our relations between each other, men and women, because men are going to be systematically punished for even more things. If you thought it was bad enough with all these other dumb things that the SJWs have introduced, it's going to be worse now with the police and bouncers when everything opens up are looking around for any potential creeper. It won't surprise me if some men get hurt by overzealous policing and bouncers, and some of them might even die. Trust me, I've seen situations when I used to work in the pub where men have been, even if they deserved it, grievously hurt. It's your own fault. I have no sympathy for you, and I think you get what you deserve. You lot went out there and broke lockdown. In fact, even Sarah Everard broke lockdown because she was last seen visiting a friend. You're not supposed to do, but that's neither here nor there. That doesn't mean she deserved to die. Obviously not, but it is something that nobody ever mentions. You lot broke the lockdown laws that you wanted, and now you're complaining. Well, no, sorry, I'm not sympathetic to that. Ultimately, what is there left to say? Our freedoms have been curbed once again over one person, one woman. Literally, one woman was all it took. It didn't take thousands of them being raped. It didn't take thousands of them being murdered. It took one person being murdered. And she's the minority of all the victims that get attacked by random strangers. In fact, what has been lost amongst the mainstream media, and some people on our side, although others do say this, like Sargon and the MRAs, for example, is that actually most people who are victims of violence as a whole, and in particular violence from strangers, are men. It's men who actually have more to fear than women. And in fact, the murder rate in this country is near rock bottom in the world. Once again, there has been fear-mongering and outrage to try and make people think that this country is this Chicago gone wild, this Somalia of rape, pillage and murder of women, when actually it's the complete opposite. It's actually young men killing each other in gang violence mainly, and also older women, strangely enough. I saw one statistic. Older women kill a hell of a lot more people than older men. But of course, reality isn't important to these people. It's only the narrative. It's only the agenda, the ideology. And that's all I really have to say. I think the rant is pretty much over. I've gone on for about half an hour. This is going to be edited down. They get what they fucking deserve. See you later, guys.